glad you're watching. We're discussing the debate around the referendum, whether to have it or not. And I want to read some of your thoughts. Thank you for all that have taken the time to tweet in. Japheth Bor, you say, Kenya is not ready for a referendum now. There is... those in support, you say, should know when opposed to it and push for changes. They told us Katiba was good. Now they're telling us it's bad. Then Roinaibe, you say, be careful when you start changing a Katiba 8 years on. That is not wisdom. Bob Kelvin, what is this they want to amend that they forgot to do? Since the same people who are calling for a referendum are the same people who campaigned for the current one. Tom Mishira Nyakaba, you say, we need Wanjiko's interest at heart in the referendum, not our politicians' interest. And then also you have Frederick Okanga, who is with the Third Way Alliance, says, as Third Way, we have outlined cogent reasons as to why we should amend the 2010 Constitution. Those reasons are pro the people, not pro politicians. And to his point, as this debate is raging on around to have a referendum or not, they have begun a popular initiative process. In fact, today Akuru Court tweeted that they have so far collected over 600,000 signatures. And the threshold, the requirement is 1 million signatures. So the question would be, why not support the likes of Akuru Court? He's come out clearly with the issues, reduce the Punguza Mzigo, the numbers of members of parliament. He wants Senate, which you sit in, to be made an upper house, so more power and, or even veto for the Senate, amongst other several recommendations. Why not back him?
I think, Sophia, I agree. Largely, before we end on break, I want to say the future of President Uhuru is very bright because he has built a united country and going forward. But I want to say, as yesterday he said, he answered Alado and the rest, that he will follow the Constitution, and that is what we want
If the Constitution would have changed, he would be following that one which would have changed,
that's what we are saying.
If it will have PM.
We are saying, according to him, he did answer yesterday because now the Constitution has not been changed.
Yes.
Secondly, on the issue of Punguza Mzigo, that's why we don't want to have an antagonistic referendum. That's why we are saying, if you are a Punguza Mzigo led by a Kuro Court, Punda Amechoka, people who want to think that expanding the executive and being in government is part of inclusion, they should sit somewhere. But I like what one of the viewers has said, that the interest of Wanjiku should be pegged on. And we want, as myself as a leader and a senator of Nandi, the referendum that I'll support is, one, it has the interest of Wanjiku. Two, it will increase more money that will go to Mashinane, because we want development to be even across the country. We might agree that devolution, I know what SG has said, is that there are so many teething problems in devolution. There is corruption, there is lethargy, we have turned our counties to employment bureaus. But that one should not be something to deter us from fully implementing devolution, because if you walk across the country, you go to eastern countries, you can have a C-section. You go to Turkana, they are now feeling part of Kenya. And those are the issues. But before we agree, or before Kenyans support Punguza Mzigo or wherever, we must sit and agree what are the questions. And you have asked in your show what's the question, and I think that is the critical thing that we'll want to do. But even where I sit from as Jubilee at the moment, and I want to agree that the president is concentrating on the Big Four agenda. That's why we have given time to individuals who want to discuss the question, the date, the time, and which questions they will ask in referendum. And as a country, I want to agree that any nation in the world have a right to review its laws. They have a right to review the Constitution. Even the American, the celebrated democracies that enjoy 200 years in existence have reviewed their Constitution. But that one, I want to thank the drafters, finally, Sophia. They made sure that amending or changing this Constitution is a hard nut to crack. And I want to advise my brother, Dr. Ekuro Court, that he should pick a few lessons from the flop initiative that flopped in 2016.
But that flopped on signatures, the IBC disqualifying. That's what maybe his will sail through, you never know.
He should learn lessons. But if we build a consensus like Ufangamano aspect that was led by the church and many other stakeholders, then we can go forward.
So let's talk about what is the question, SG. Let's begin with some of the proposals we've had. Number one, let's begin at the executive, expanding that. You support that, don't you?
Of course, let me tell you something, Sister Sophia. If you want to know where we are, you must compare. And if you want to know what type of questions are, you have got to look at it. First of all, get the Bomas draft. Look at it. Compare with the Cliff draft. Come to where we are. See how many things did we omit in that particular area. 3, and I want to thank the senator that Uhuru Kenyatta has tried to bring all these things together, because the founding father of this nation could not take it more than 3 years. We had the Moore conference where he did away with his deputy because he was not in conformity with his agenda and what he wanted, with the Kenya he wanted. Now, Uhuru has tried to bring, from 2013 when he took over, to bring Kenyans together. But then the mood, you need to read, even him, he has read the mood of the country. Everybody has read the mood of the country. The mood of the country, as I'm talking to you now, with whatever is happening, name it from corruption, name it from issues of hiking prices on essential commodities, petrol and so on. This issue of Punda Imechoka, people would like to, the mood in the country is that we must address some shortcomings in our document that makes us govern this country. Right. Lastly, the issue of structures with inclusivity. I had mentioned it. It is not good since we removed Section 2A in the old constitution. Every after elections, there are cows, people, because Kenya's politics is unique, is pegged on ethnicity. And if you see, for example, Jubilee, when they came together and they managed, and I want to say the 2 young men were shrewd campaigners. They displayed wonderful campaign. They took over the government, and then they declared openly that this government will be for only 2 tribes to fill positions as they came together. And that is why we are saying, if we continue like that, that whoever wins, now he takes it all. We will always be fighting. We must address this issue of inclusivity without any bias. We must look at every detailed provision in the Constitution that negates the principles of unity.
If you have PM, 2 DPMs, that will be inclusivity. But many will argue that's inclusivity for those politicians, not Kenyans really.
No, but you see, those politicians are Kenyans. Some of them have succeeded supporters. Some of them you cannot just wish them away.
Okay.
And you know this.
Yeah. So to his point, let me put this to you, Senator, as you respond to that, because the former, during the constitutional review process pre-2010, all the drafts, Wako, Bomas, Kilifi, including the committee of experts, all of the experts in the draft had the executive having the position of a PM and deputy prime ministers, hybrid system in some cases, fully parliamentary system. So it was in that Naivasha meeting that something happened clearly that then took Kenya to the president position. So that all the experts thought that is a structure going, as the SG has said, the politics of this country that would work until that Naivasha meeting happened.
With all due respect, I don't know, let me correct the SG. He's an elder and we respect him because he has been the champion of labor rights in this country. I don't think there is anywhere that the president or deputy president declared that the government would belong to 2 tribes and the jury is out. Secondly, I agree with him on all those questions. The only place I don't agree with him is on the governance structure. If, for example, let us agree, if it, for example, introduce the PM today, the largest majority in the House is Jubilee. And you are telling that the Prime Minister will be elected by the members of Parliament. It will mean that if the Prime Minister position is there today, the Prime Minister will be Aden Duale. The same of Jubilee. So where does inclusivity come? Is it a guided democracy, a guided election? Where you are telling Kenyans, apart from electing so and so XYZ to be the president, you must elect XYZ as the prime minister so that inclusivity comes to place.
But comment on my question on the experts and all these other drafts.
No, I agree.
That.
But you
so
know,
that must have been informed by something.
Referendum is a political process. There were compromises that was made. And if my mind serves me right, it is, of course, the Prime Minister was of the position of parliamentary at that time. The Deputy President was for the position of parliamentary at that point in time. But the person who took over was a former Prime Minister of presidential, because he thought by being the PM, it would be easy for him to rise for president. And that is when he has realized does not work, he has changed tact. Because the current deputy president was of the opinion that a parliamentary system would work for this country.
Okay.
But he didn't. But you know, if you bring the issue of hybrid, the issue of having an executive prime minister, unless you will put guns to the head of Kenyans and say, if you have elected Atwoli as the president, you must elect Cherargei as the prime minister.
So then
it will be a guided democracy, which will not work, because you will be denying the universal suffrage that the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, the ICPP that is provided under the UN, of declining the vote.
So what you've said, Senator SG, I'll put then this to you. Is this a Raila Odinga, having once bitten, twice shy, made that mistake in assuming he'd become president and supporting the presidential system? He did not. He still hasn't. Many believe he'll vie again in 2022, that this is all about him securing.
Not many believe, his lieutenants have
He has said, okay, that this is about Raila securing a position in the executive.
And I want a young man, Solomon, a young senator, to look at it differently. You see, for how long are we going to have Railas around, all these other people around? What we are trying to do, we want to work a document. The document we are proposing is for posterity. And this document, we must look into it very critically. And I have heard him say if Jubilee now came up and with won the presidency and the prime minister, which means the prime minister will be Duale. That is not how it is done.
Yes.
Because Jubilee, first of all, if we want to have a nice one, make it hybrid, where the president will be subjected to election. After the president has been elected by Jubilee, for example, the other party with the majority in the House will be asked to produce a prime minister. You see, for that matter, and other seats, according to the arrangement and as per that document will come out. Lastly, you know, Sister Sophia,
yes,
to the proposals we are making, we are demanding for a referendum. And I'm happy the deputy president said, let those who have their own views on whatever area in the constitution come up with, and then have a properly constituted committee of the experts, just like what we had last time, to assist Kenyans and politicians included, looking at which area do we need to address as far as amendments on our constitution is. But lastly, what I want to tell you, the mood in the country, I represent the grassroots myself, people who come from the grassroots. The mood in Kenya is that we must revisit our constitution.
Yeah. Some of those tweets I was reading.
One quick one. Before you read the tweet, I remember before the handshake, the good people of NASA, the defunct NASA and the current ODM, they told us there is something called electoral reforms and electoral justice. I don't know if we go to referendum because they didn't have faith the way IBC is currently constituted. Will they have faith now after the referendum vote? Yeah.
And of course, it's
so where is the electoral justice?
Electoral
they were
justice.
pursuing on another reforms.
And the DP said he hopes they'll accept the results. I mean, briefly comment on that as I put this message and question to the senator, that at the end of the day, IEBC is in shambles.
Yes.
And this is a point also that I think Wetangula has spoken
and I
to the senator.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you about something. I've been voting since 1969 myself. I voted first in 1969. There is no any electoral regime or electoral body that supervises election that is absolute 100%, and after elections is not blamed. What is there that even if today
you have confidence in this IEBC, an election was nullified, presidential election, look at the drama in the commission, 3 commissioners resign, then waltzed back in, CEO who's been on suspension for months on end.
I've told you that all those bodies that supervises elections, since that time immemorial, none of them has had support after the elections.
This has been epic, sir. You must concede to
but,
that.
I wish you saw them in the long one, where people are being declared who was... you know, you heard of that one.
So you think this IBC can conduct a referendum?
But I think now, you know, we will be losing focus because now we still have an issue of sorting out the IBC. And as the Chair of Justice Legal Affairs, we have been trying in any way to do a report on how the IEBC should operate in future.
Sophia,
but my brother should tell us what is it about the electoral justice, because they want another vote. They don't believe in the IEBC the way it's constituted. The Building Bridges Initiative, one of the issues they were saying is that it is in that document of the electoral justice. So in as much as we go for the referendum, the questions will come out at the interest of...
Let me tell you, Sophie. So what will have to happen is that let us address this issue of amendment on our constitution. Let us address those issues at end. After that, after we have identified those areas that we want to amend now, that question of IEBC will come in at a later stage.
So you think we need to go to referendum before 2022?
Absolutely, to address this issue.
No, but I think on my side, I think it should be the seventh, or is it the sixth question, so that Kenyans can vote on it in 2022.
Okay, so yes. As part of the election.
As part of the election, so for convenience, even the SG is a labor rights defender. He knows that the disruption of the agenda, it's quite expensive one. It will disrupt the Kenyans' way of life.
Let me tell you, issue of expenses will not be there. The way now it is in the mood, and including with the support it has earned now from the deputy president. Issues of expenses will not be there.
But it's still going to be expensive.
But in fact, I'm not looking at the angle of expensive. I'm looking at the angle of disruption, because the president has the Big Four agenda.
All right.
And if the success of president...
Are they mutually exclusive? Are you saying if the country is to focus on a conversation on making amendments to the constitution, that halts the Big Four agenda?
No, it can't.
It will disrupt the Big Four agenda.
No.
I can tell you, because of course we're having a conversation. The issue, I don't have a problem if we have a national conversation or referendum.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue, but my concern is let us have this referendum in 2022.
Okay.
So that the normal operations of government and sort of a folk
Sophie,
can go.
Let me read this text from Omboko Milemba. He addresses both of you. He says he's watching. Thank you for watching. He says Atwoli is always wise and predicts right. However, we rely on him to give direction when it's required, so let him not tackle young men like Senator Sang. I don't know how you've tackled him. But he says, I predicted 5 years ago that Uhuru Kenyatta will be the first benevolent dictator in Kenya while at Chavakali public meeting. It's coming to pass. He's the biggest beneficiary of the referendum. So you've alluded to it would be great for the president to continue serving in a different order. Of course, this constitution doesn't allow him to. And someone is saying, yeah, that this will be the first benevolent dictator, and this is what it's all about, that he's the biggest beneficiary. Your comment?
I agree. I heard him say one day that we need a benevolent dictator in this country. Absolutely. Some instances to instill discipline, but not discipline to fight on the rights or overthrow the constitution or challenge the constitution. We need the discipline in the country. We need that spirit of Kenyan, and I want to agree that elders like him, and that is why I said from the word go, Building Bridges Initiative should have had elders like him, and Omboko Milemba should.
So do you agree that prediction that Uhuru Kenyatta would be the biggest beneficiary if we were to change the constitution?
To some extent, we have not agreed which is the question.
Absolutely.
When we have agreed the question, for example, as we have said, Sophia, that one, the issue of increasing the table or elongating the table of executive in a no-no. Because if you ask any ordinary Wanjiku today, that you want the top
But the DP wanted that at the time, so what has changed within your circles?
What we are saying is the interest, as I agree with SG. He has said the problems Kenyans face is more importantly on the Wanjiku's interest. Now, if you ask Kenyans, for example, the issue of adding more salaries to members of parliament, it could be necessary, but it is not urgent and needful to the country. So the big question is the Wanjiku's interest. For example, I agree with SG has said there are so many independent commissions that are in the constitution. We need to do away with some of them. The issue of nominations, either for MCAs, women rep, the issue of nominated senators and members of parliament, is a dangerous question because it is affirmative action issue. And if we now, the risk we'll run to is there are many conventions that we have signed to protect the women's rights, people living with disabilities, the youth rights, among other rights.
Okay.
If today we remove those, the affirmative, what will be the affirmative action for these groups? How will they operate?
So I want, as we wind up, we have about 3 minutes for you to articulate for me.
Sophie,
yes,
let me tell
the
you.
issues you'd want to
Kenya
address. The specific.
requires assertive president like yesterday. Very assertive president.
This one is not assertive?
I will tell you why. No, Uhuru has now realized he's becoming assertive now.
Okay.
But he should do more than what he's doing now. Look, yesterday I was in the city. And I was surprised when I saw the number of motorcycles driving in the city. And this is an international city without any organ of directing them. That in the CBD, it should be the safest place because it has both international and local visiting visitors or guests who are in meetings and what have you. 2, this is the only country in the world that have no public organized transport in the city. You see, and these are the things that requires somebody who can plant a sense of direction into the masses. Look, now internationally, all cities have been given colors. Nairobi,
but we don't need a referendum to do those things.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying on assertiveness of what Miremba was trying to talk. That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
That we need that one. Issue of referendum is deeper than that, and I've told you.
So let's be specific. So proposal around reduction of counties, you support?
I support it.
Reduction of number of MPs?
Absolutely.
Scrapping of women rep?
Not saying scrapping of women rep, but nominating them and doing whatever. They should be able to compete just like another MPs without saying this is the number of women rep we want.
Okay. Is there any proposal you have outside of the representation structure? What else do we need to change in that constitution? Or is it all about leadership? That the biggest problem you see is the numbers and the positions as well as the counties?
Absolutely, looking afresh at the governance structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is what you'd like to see. What about you, sir?
What I would want to see is to ensure that we safeguard the interest of Wanjiku. One, to ensure, and I agree with what we don't need some constitution to do some of these things.
Do you support reduction of counties?
Yeah, one, I will not support reduction of counties because one, these are the issues when you look at Article 174. In fact, what we should be doing, we should be even creating more funds up to the level of ward level so that they decide on which projects, because we want people to feel development in Mashinani. The issue, I want the independent commissions to be removed. Some of them are doing duplication. Finally, is on the issue of devolution. The reason SG and the rest of Kenyans feel that devolution is too much is we have duplication of roles. You have parastatals that are doing the same job as should be done by the county governments. For example, agriculture is fully devolved, but you still find 95 functions are still being in Nairobi. And that is why we're having mess with NCPB. Because if we devolve the NCPB to the lowest level, you could not find a farmer who is saying he's farming 800 acres in Bungoma because you can't get. So I think let us, and then finally, the issue of employment bureaus that we have done our counties. When you go to counties, there are government workers that were seconded by the national government. Secondly, there are employees by defunct municipalities. Thirdly, there are employees that are being employed by the governors. All these, if we allow the devolution to be slim, efficient, and effective, it will not be allowed. But if the national government, for example, another example finally I can give you is the constitution has proposed on the 4th schedule that within the next 5 years we should restructure the national provincial administration should be restructured to be in line with devolution. Up to today, when you go to Mashinani, you get an ACC assistant county commissioner and sub-county administrator doing the same job.
But let me quickly then put this to you. You're a member of the Jubilee Party. You've been talking a lot tonight about the Big Four agenda. You're also a senator, and you're talking about protecting devolution. One would argue, and there are those critics of the Big Four that say all the Big Four are devolved functions. So that you as Senate should be now calling out and ensuring the government funds the counties to the extent of those Big Four, because they're all devolved. Even housing with the new taxation is a devolved function, that we're seeing more of it being taken up by the national government, so that at this level, even now, some of the issues you're saying to be resolved, shouldn't you as Senate hold the government to account to ensure even those functions and the money is funding those functions is in the
I
counties?
know transition has been very slow, and we have agreed that functions should follow costing. I think the biggest challenge we're having, and number two, the constitution says the national government and county governments will be interdependent. They have a symbiotic relationship. It doesn't mean that if functions are fully devolved, there should be a link that is interdependence, and that was very clear in the Constitution.
Okay.
And I agree, that is why we are now pushing with the government. I agree that 10 billion that they want to slash that goes to counties is a big mess. We need to agree that some function, and even if you say, I sit in ad hoc committee on maize, one of the radical proposals that we'll give out is that we need to devolve the National Cereals and Produce Board fully so that governors can buy maize at their level.
All right, let me give SG the final word as we wrap up. You prophesied, as I said earlier, about this referendum. So when do you see it happening, your crystal ball?
Let me tell you for
what
sure.
does it show you?
I will tell you for sure and for free.
Yeah.
Before we go 2022 elections, we will go under new constitution.
Okay.
Take it from me. And I want every Kenyan from where he is to note it down.
Do you think the
Kenyans
president will come out
referendum.
in support publicly? He's not yet to speak on it.
The
president, do you think he'll publicly speak on whether he supports or
No,
not?
the president, when his party will be supporting it, he will have no alternative but to support it. Yeah, his party will have to support it.
Do you think Ruto will stick in Jubilee until 2022, or this will fall apart?
You know, Ruto is a very intelligent leader. If today he changed and he said, let us support the referendum, he understands what might happen in future. So, but when he will feel he's betrayed, eventually he will walk away.
So
this is what happened to Jaramogi Oginga Odinga in 1966.
So Jubilee will stay put or not, in your view?
You know, the Kenyan political parties sometimes are used for purposes of elections.
Yeah.
We don't know whether 2022 there will be other emerging challenges and changes in new political parties and alignments and so on.
All right. He says before 2022. Your thoughts? Because now you're supporting in a measured way.
I want to assure Kenyans, where I sit from as a Jubilee member, Jubilee is built on a solid ground of unity of purpose, and the president and the deputy president and the rest of Kenyans coming under it. I can tell you Jubilee will go a very long way. Our plan is 20-year plan. As you know, after the retirement of President Uhuru Kenyatta, hopefully, God willing, 2022 to 2032, His Excellency the President will rise to power.
Even as he's saying he's being ejected.
No, he is not being ejected, but we are saying,
he's the one who said
we are saying the handshake is a poison chalice. We are now keeping it at arm's length.
Wow. And that takes two to tango. So when you say a poison chalice, you're not only casting that aspersion on the former Prime Minister, but on the President himself.
But what we are saying, let me clear so that Kenyans, the doubt, maybe before the SG comes in, kindly allow me with a lot of indulgence.
Our time is up.
From the side where President was, and I said when we started the show that the handshake that President went for was to bring cohesiveness and a stable environment for the implementation of the Big Four. On the other side, the former Prime Minister came to lay ground for 2022. As you can see, let me just quote Amolo Otiende so that I finish. He said a handshake was not an end itself, but a means to an end.
But the double standard I find in that statement is this, very quickly. On one hand, the people who support DP Ruto say that the president is a good one, the former Prime Minister,
the importation of confusion.
Then the other side says it's the former Prime Minister who's bringing all these problems. So either
that
way...
let me tell you, Sophie, if I make an agreement with you and we agree on something, and we are going ahead together as a team, and then somebody somewhere sees that thing as it was meant to destabilize a system, it is not only to one party who did append his signature to that particular agreement, but it is all inclusive, we people who did participate. This issue, and I want you to ask the young man, William, I respect him very much, to be a little bit careful with his words, particularly when he says Atutaki Matapeli, Secretary Matapeli. You know, he's including the president that is part of Utapeli in that handshake. This is not good. He should be able to check because he is the highest next person in command of this country.
But he should be more diplomatic. Lord Denning said, Lord Denning said, finally, Lord Denning said, no one knows the intention of man except the devil himself.
Wow. All right. Except the devil himself. We will end it there. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Secretary General Kotu, Francis Atwoli, it was a pleasure. And Samson Cherargei, Nandi Senator as well. A pleasure to have you with us tonight. And we will wait to see how all this plays out in coming days. You are watching Checkpoint. We're taking a quick break. When we return, my colleague Robinson Okenya will have all the sporting action for you. Please stay tuned.